Welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do our update on natural gas today. It is April 23rd, 2023. It's a Sunday. It's the weekend update. And if you're not following on Twitter, definitely take a look at the pinned comment. I tweeted about this. I believe this looks like a daily cycle low here on day 36, which is right in line with what you typically see in that 30-ish day range. This was a much longer one here on day 52. That said, remember that this one topped out on day 7, or I should say this daily cycle, right? This daily cycle topped out on day 5. So definitely caution is warranted for sure. And we'll look at BOIL and UNG as well. We'll just look at the source first. And we've been talking about, is the April seasonality going to finally kick in? Well, we're running out of time because next week is the last week of April. So we would need to see some massive, daily candles that hold for us to close out with a very positive April. I mean, I don't like the likelihood of seeing something like this for this week to close out April. I think is probably pretty low. I mean, we'll see. Could be pleasantly surprised. But so far, what we have here is, again, a swing low. And notice how many times we kind of tested this level, like here. So what is that? That's, basically right just below $2. So tested it here, came back, tested it here, tested it here, tested it here, dropped below it, and then finally sprung back up. Now, to be clear, this candle has a high at 2.385, and that's 2.383. So this is your high so far on day 2, and below the low of this candle, you actually do have a swing high on the board. So below 2.229. So you really want to watch that level. That price needs to stay above that and it closed just a razor above that. So you wanna watch that level as your first sign that, okay, maybe this thing is rolling over. But so far, potential short-term low here, and that would make this Friday would have been day 4. So we'd be starting day 5 tonight / on Monday morning. So keep that in mind, right? Like the last 2 daily cycles topped out on days 7 and day 5 respectively. And so caution is warranted here. Now, if we look at the weekly chart, and again, we will look at UNG and BOIL because they're doing slightly different things, which is important to just kind of triangulate across, BOIL, UNG, and even coal, the inverse. So not a very strong looking candle here. A lot of upper wick. That's because of that big red candle that created this upper wick here on the weekly chart. But you can see this pattern on the weekly of this this false breakdown, actually, because you have this low here at 1.967, and then you have this lower low at 1.946, so like 30 ticks lower. And so that creates your potential false breakdown pattern for a move up in the weekly cycle. We did have this labeled as week 16, and since then, because we've made this undercut low, that sets up a situation where this is week 23, and to be clear, potentially a weekly cycle low, albeit that big red candle on the daily has definitely been the fly in the ointment. If not for that, this could have been a pretty big move up so far. And so again, this is the kind of thing where it's not a slam dunk by any means, not an amazing risk reward, but the obvious target would be back to this move back here, right at around $3. And down here at 2.233, that's a lot of upside in percentage terms, especially if one is trading the actual futures where, a tick is worth a lot of money in just even absolute terms. So that's your weekly. And as always, we want to look at the monthly candle. Oh, what do we have? A green monthly candle. We talked about this idea that April is the best month in terms of seasonality for natural gas, especially as represented by UNG and BOIL. We've shown that seasonality chart multiple times. And so it wouldn't be surprising that we would get a green month in April. We do have a whole week to go of trading next week, so things could change. Things could change dramatically. But so far, it looks like we're going to get that green month, although not a ton of upside, because this is basically just at the lower end of the range from this big red month, which was March. So not super positive, even if it is a quote unquote green month. And if we look at what that means for the quarterly candle, it means the quarterly candle is actually green now. We still have 2 months to go. Actually, we have to obviously close out April, and then after that, we have 2 months to trade. But you want to start thinking in those terms, right? A major reversal on the quarterly chart would look something like this, right? The Q3 candle would open and it would make a higher high above the Q3 candle, telling you, okay, maybe we're now reversing this massive downtrend we have on the quarterly chart. That's a long ways away here, but that's how you want to be thinking about it in your mind's eye. That's how you identify a long-term bottom. Right now, we don't have that, or we're not even close to evidence of that at all. So let's look at UNG and Boyle, and we'll wrap this up. So UNG, so notice it's showing the same pattern as natural gas. So, well, actually, for in this case, Friday would have been day 5. So you see your low is here. That was on April 14th. You had a gap, which was actually filled on Thursday. So that's helpful. Like, look at that long wick. That fills, just to be clear, I know there's a lot of lines on this, but like understanding the price action more precisely, you can see from here to here, there was a gap, right? A gap from here to here. And then we made even a higher high, and then it came back, filled that gap. That's actually pretty bullish. And that becomes a very clear, very, very clear stop level, or I should say area zone, $6.76. That's where the gap held. And we're here at $7. Wait, where did we close actually? Yeah, we closed at $7 even. So that's a really simple. Now, because this thing is a wild trader, wouldn't be surprised to see a false breakdown below this level. That's why I say again, it's a zone. But that gives you some really clear risk reward to approach this. And if we go to the monthly chart, as we looked at for natural gas itself, this thing is green, so that's a good sign. Let's look at Boyle. Are we also green? So Boyle is just barely green. Look at that. It's really more of a doji. Not surprising. Again, Boyle sometimes can't get out of its own way. If we look at the daily chart on Boyle, same situation where but I mean, instead of with UNG, it filled a gap and then stopped there. For Boyle, of course, it always goes deeper. Like you can see, the gap was there, and of course, it went much deeper than that gap. But all the same, that's a very, very clear stop, a stop area, if you want to call it. That low is at $3.26. You really don't want to find yourself in that area because that suggests that we're going to break this low and then continue to make all-time lows as we have been. And we close here on Friday at $3.44. So it's about 20 cents to the downside, something in that neighborhood. So that's your daily chart. And again, yeah, we talked about the monthly being just a little doji kind of thing. And man, another green week, another red week. It just can't. So that also tells you at some point, that like we're gonna get, just like a just kind of relief rally, little green week, as well. But I mean, man, Boyle just can't get out of its own way. Let's look at UNG. I think was also green, red on the week, I should say. Yeah. So actually did make a higher high on the week, but closed red, and Boyle did the same thing. That's one of those frustrating kind of moves, but also important to understand the price action that at least it's leaning higher. And lastly, let's look at cold because that's the inverse. We want to confirm that it is moving in the opposite direction, and also triangulate in terms of like the short-term high and the short-term low. So you can see this was your high for cold, and so once we went below that candle, that created a swing high. So that's what we want to look for. We would expect that when cold makes that swing high, that's when we see our swing low for Boyle, for UNG, for natural gas. So that happened back on April 6th for cold, actually. Because you see, this is a back test of that high. Didn't quite get there. You can even, if you were a trend line guy, you can draw a trend line down that, like sloping down that way. And then you can see it just starts a series of lower lows and higher, so it goes up, then this, now we did this. And so you expect to do that, something like this. So that tells you this is probably in daily cycle decline after having rallied for 24 days. So it rallied for 24 days. Now we're declining. And of course, when this thing bounces, natural gas and all the rest are going to take a spill. I'm not saying that this is controlling that. Just it's an inverse. So you want to just watch that, watch the shape of and structure of the chart. And interestingly, it's still holding green to the week, just like the other ones were still holding red, even though it did make a lower low, you can see. So this is just, again, the opposite, and just hanging on that 10-period moving average. So that is your update on natural gas. We are in a new daily cycle. We had a back test that is held so far, which can serve as a stop loss level. Now it's a question of proving itself with follow through next week. That's the update for natural gas. Thanks for watching.